Hello, everybody. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this virtual conference, African and Africanness, the Relevance of Living Traditions. I'm Pamela Weichman, your host and the Director of Education and Artist Services at WheatonArts. This virtual conference is presented by PNC Arts Alive and the New Jersey State Council on the Arts. We thank them for their support. Please consider exploring options such as membership, donations, and shop.wheatonarts.org in order to promote or to support Wheaton Arts and allow us to offer free programs such as this conference. It is my pleasure to introduce our moderators for this program. Our first moderator is Dr. Iveta Pirgova. Iveta is the director of the Folklife and Cultural Studies Department at Wheaton Arts and Cultural Center in Millville, New Jersey. Dr. Pirgova graduated from the Sofia University in Sofia, Bulgaria, with a master's in literature and folklore, as well as cultural studies. She received her PhD in folklore and performance studies from the Institute of Folklore and Ethnology at Bulgarian Academy of Science. In 2000, Dr. Pirgova became the director of Folklife and Cultural Studies at Wheaton Arts, overseeing the Down Jersey Folklife Center. There, she has worked with more than 65 different ethnic communities, curating over 30 major exhibitions, many festivals, performances, artist residencies, educator training, workshops, as well as classes. She also teaches regular courses in cultural anthropology and cultural diversity at Rowan College of South Jersey and is actively involved with professional organizations such as the American Folklore Society, the American Anthropological Association, and the International Organization of Folk Art. Iveta, thank you so much for being one of our moderators for this program and for all your work with this conference.
Thank you so much, Pam.
Our second moderator for this program is Ira Bond. Ira Bond is a performer, dancer, percussionist, educator, researcher, community activist, masquerade specialist, musician, and cultural enrichment specialist for 30 years. Ira's cultural, artistic, and educational mission is to utilize arts as a means to develop positive relationships and to reintroduce African cultural values to the African diaspora in our area. In his work as an educator, Ira emphasizes the development of a socialization process, rite of passage, and the creativity associated with traditional arts that can transform people to a higher realization of their life's purpose. Ira earned his BA in communications with a minor in African American Studies from Mansfield University, earning a Master's of Education in Multicultural Education from Eastern University in PA. His thesis was Teaching Content Through the Arts. His interest in traditional cultures led him to Antioch University to earn an honorary certificate in Malian arts and culture with concentrations in French and Bamana intensive, traditional Malian aesthetic, and a traditional apprentice with the National Ballet of Mali. Ira is a lead drummer for Messiah Dance Works of Philadelphia and the Afro-Cuban dance company Kulu Mele. Ira is also the founder and director of the Maladelphia Performing Arts Ensemble that serves to create a bridge between African immigrant and African American communities through traditional song, dance, music, and masquerade. African masquerade is Ira's specialty. Since he was initiated into its traditions in Mali and the Ivory Coast, Ira created over 20 African masquerades, which are masks and garments. Ira uses drums, masks, and ritual to teach both children and adults how to pay respects to the ancestors while reflecting on our own mortality and imprint on our world. Ira, it is an absolute pleasure to have you here, and we are so grateful for your participation.
Thank you. It's an honor and pleasure as well for me. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Pam, for letting people know who we are and to connect our faces with the work that we do. So it is my turn to make an introduction, and it is my really great pleasure to introduce Dr. Lois Wilkin from La Troupe Macandal. Lois Wilkin, a native New Yorker, has had the pleasure of researching traditional music and dance in Haiti and the Haitian diaspora. As Executive Director of La Troupe Macandal, Dr. Wilkin develops education and performance programs for the public. Wild Cliffs Media Company published her book, The Drums of Vodou, and one may visit online version of her Vodou Music in Haiti exhibit at La Médiathèque Caraïbe. She's currently documenting the life and legacy of master drummer Frisner Augustin for a web archive and a biography, serving as editorial consultant for the Journal of Haitian Studies and leading a working group on Haiti's ecosystems for the Haitian Studies Association. She also works with jazz musicians on their scores and does some songwriting of her own. Welcome, Lois.
Well, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation, Iveta. And I want to thank WheatonArts and its supporters. And I'd like to thank Pamela and Ira, everybody involved in putting this together. It's my pleasure to talk. It's pleasure. It also, I feel a great urgency to talk about the culture of Haiti right now. It has taken on a particular urgency lately. It's something that many of us have been doing for years now, but the job isn't finished. And what better way to present Haiti to the public than through its performing arts and all of its expressive arts. So I'd just like to, first of all, the image that you're looking at is part of the expressive arts of Haiti. You see the name Kessler Pierre. Kessler has done work with WheatonArts in the past and also with Troupe Macandal. And this is it's a traditional veve for the drum spirit, Untor. And he put it through he added his own magic touch to it, let's say, with color. And I'm going to talk about the veve as I go on, but this is called a veve, and this is a veve for Untor, who is the spirit of drums and drummers. So now, how did I become interested? Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm not, it doesn't look like I'm Haitian, I guess, and but somehow I think the way I like to put it is that Haiti adopted me. And how that all began was in the 1970s, I was actually a composer of electronic music. And like many composers of that time and up till now too, I was wanting to hear sounds that were, beyond the sounds that most of us hear when we go through music training. And I knew that ethnomusicology was the way to go for that. And so I started taking courses at Hunter College and then got just pulled into it. And pretty soon I was in a master's program for ethnomusicology. And one of the first assignments was to go out into New York City. The idea then was the urban ethnomusicology. You don't have to go halfway around the world to do this. You can find the whole world right in New York City. So I knew some Haitian people and started making contacts. Through a series of contacts, I was led to a wonderful master drummer named Frisner Augustin. And if we can go to the next slide. Yeah, okay, there's Frisner. I came into his drum class in January of 1981 and then worked with him from then on in. We became life partners. And in this particular photo, which is by a French photographer named Chantal Regnault, Frisner is drumming for a Vodou ritual. And I mean, you can see how joyous it is in this picture. And Chantal really captured just a great moment. Now, this was not in Haiti. This was in a basement in New York. In New York City, there are no peristyles or temples the way there are in Haiti, and people tend to use basement space for their rituals. So this was taken in November of 1984. And there he is. And for reasons I'm sure you understand, I call this picture Happy Frisner. So I was taking lessons with him, but also a group called La Troupe Macandal came into New York in later in 1981, from Port-au-Prince. And Frisner took them under his wing because he had been here since 1972. And I just got involved as well. And incorporated the troupe in 1984. It became a nonprofit organization, and since then it's still going. Now, Frisner passed away in 2012 while we were on a trip to Haiti. And I still feel, like I'm still working for him. And I'm writing his biography now. But I've written a book once before, a kind of breadth over depth look at Vodou music. And so we can see what that book looks like from the next slide. And there he is again, same photo we used for this book. The book came out in 1992, but as I said, it was an introduction. And in his biography, we'll go even deeper into some of the music that he became famous for. And he really did. He was very accomplished. He, over the years, won awards, including in 1999, the National Endowment for the Arts National Heritage Fellowship. And I think that today he is still the only person born in Haiti who received that award. It's a very prestigious award. So so I'm doing the archive, also an archive of his life and work, as was mentioned in the introduction, and that's ongoing. Some of it is online, but there's a lot to do. It's evolving, and it's FrisnerAugustinArchive.org if anybody is interested. So you can find out more about him there. So he was my mentor. I got everything about drumming from him. So I'm mostly familiar with Port-au-Prince style Vodou. Port-au-Prince, as you know, is the capital of Haiti. But if you go throughout Haiti and listen to Vodou music, listen to music in Les Cayes, in Cap-Haïtien, in the Artibonite region, you're going to hear some, like different styles. And so why all these different styles? And one of the hallmarks, by the way, of Haitian Vodou drumming is that there are many different styles of drumming. Some people call them rhythms. I like to call them styles because I think it's not only a matter of the rhythmic dimension of the music, also tone comes in, which is very important. And I count about maybe 24 different styles, and some people count more. If you travel throughout the country, you'll find even more. So where does this all come from? Okay, well, this is Afro-Haitian music, and all these styles can be traced back to the African continent, and especially West and West Central Africa. And West Africa usually means the Gulf of Guinea region, which includes countries like Ghana, Togo, Benin, Nigeria, and then going down the west side of Africa to the Congo. And the two especially big regions are that Congo region and also the Benin, Togo, that area too. And so, of course, we know how people arrived in the islands in the Caribbean. The French colonized Saint-Domingue in the late part of the 17th century. That the entire island, which was the one that Columbus landed on in 1492, it was under Spanish rule for a long time, and then after the end of a war in Europe, Spain had to give something to France, and so they gave them the western third of Hispaniola, or which also can go by the name Quisqueya. And so it came under French rule, and it was the French who really, under the French, that slavery exploded. They put people to work on sugar plantations, and this became highly profitable for France, leading their colony there, the Saint-Domingue, as they called it, to be also called the Pearl of the Antilles. But it wasn't a pearl for most of the people who lived there. And like I said, they came from anywhere along the coast. I mean, very early on in the slave trade, even like, say, early 18th century, even countries like Senegal were providing people and captives, and then it goes goes all the way south to the Congo region. So these were all people who, were people with different national names, different languages, a variety of drumming and dance and artistic styles, and but they now find themselves together, working side by side on plantations. And so through a process of amalgamations, and let's look at I kind of skipped over a slide, but if we go to the next slide, I'll just comment on it for a moment. This is Frisner Augustin as a youth. He grew up in a really poor neighborhood, and so this was a Mardi Gras band that he had put together. One of his cousins is in it too, and it's the first picture that he had of himself. The family was extremely poor, and so it was on a trip in 1990 that a photographer came to him and said, "Oh, I have an old picture of you from the 1960s," and there it was. So it was the oldest picture in his archive. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Okay, now this is I grabbed this from Wikipedia. It's a scene from colonial Saint-Domingue, and you can see that the African people were cutting sugar cane. It was mostly sugar. They worked on other things too, but and you see some of the overseers who were just having a much better life. Okay. What happened in Saint-Domingue, there were a number of slave revolts over the years, revolts of enslaved people, as there were in other colonies. I mean, Brazil was famous for them, and Jamaica. People ran away regularly, formed maroon colonies. And in Haiti, what happened was that there was an explosion that the French couldn't contain, and that was in 1791. And so let's go to the next slide. So this is by an artist named Castor Basile, and it commemorates Wakaima, which is a legendary, not legendary really, there's historical evidence that it happened. And a pig was sacrificed, and it was a call to arms. It happened in August. The exact date is debated among scholars. Could have been August 14th, but for sure, on August 22nd, northern Haiti was in flames. The revolt took place, and so it's felt that it was planned 8 days in advance. Maybe it was a little bit closer to August 22nd. But what happened was that so this is the ceremony of Wakaima. Wakaima is a place in northern Haiti where it happened. And it happened, a good reason for thinking it was August 14th is because on August 15th, most of the French went up to the town Cap Haïtien, as it's called today, but it was Cap Français then, because it was the feast of Our Lady of the Assumption. And so they were not as present on the plantations, and so it was an opportunity for enslaved people to get together and plot this uprising. So the uprising was quite successful because it spread throughout the colony, and by 1793, the French gave independence to the enslaved people of Saint-Domingue. And then the following year, they liberated the enslaved people in all of their colonies. And then what happened was later on, when Napoleon came into power, he said, "Oh no, we're taking them back." And so he sent people to Guadeloupe, and they managed to defeat and throw people back into slavery, but they couldn't do it in Saint-Domingue. And so we just passed the anniversary of the last battle, the Battle of Vertières, which was the last battle of the Haitian Revolution, where the French surrendered and the war was over. And one of the generals, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, declared independence on January 1st of 1804. So January 1st is Haiti's Independence Day. I'm going to skip over much of this 19th century because, for reasons of time, but this was the period of time when Vodou really amalgamated more. It came together more. There's a novel written by Haitian in 1837 that details a Vodou ritual, and it's very interesting because there aren't too many documents like that from the 19th century, and in this one, people kind of walked into the ceremony in their national groups because people still knew where they came from in Africa, and but this structure has come down to today, and we still we still see Vodou rites that are organized by nation. So, we have Rada Nation and the Juba Nation and the Nago Nation, and I'll talk about that some more. But that so Vodou really became a way, even after people didn't remember where exactly in Africa they came from anymore, because the memory just faded over time. But they knew through Vodou what that the people of Haiti came from these different nations. And so, among other things, that's what Vodou is. It's a celebration of ancestry. It's honoring the ancestors, and it's a way of remembering, cultural remembering. And so this was all taking shape throughout the 19th century. Toward the end of the 19th century, the Catholic Church came in. It had broken from Haiti around the time of the Revolution, but it comes back with missionaries, and there's a big persecution of Vodou that takes place in the 1860s. And it was only the first of many after that. Now, Vodou survived all these persecutions. There was another one that happened beginning in 1915, which was when the United States invaded Haiti and occupied Haiti until 1934. So it was a very long occupation. And during that time, there was yet another attempt to wipe out Vodou. In addition to like a militant resistance, and I think we have, yes, let's go to the next slide. This slide is famous. I mean, this painting is famous. It's Philomé Aubin, and he did this painting from a photograph that was taken of this man who was one of the resistance fighters, Charlemagne Perrault. And in this picture, what the U.S. did is they tricked him into meeting up with somebody who just gave him away to the United States, and he was executed, and he was tied to something that it made him look like Christ on the cross, and so people really associated with him with that, and he became even more of a hero. The occupation by the United States was highly unpopular, of course, and there was a lot of resistance. After the militant resistance was put down, a cultural resistance comes up, and people like Jacques Roumain, who was one of Haiti's great authors, became like champions of Vodou. And so for the first time, people who were more like on the educated side began to see the value in Vodou, and it becomes a means of resistance. And the occupation finally did end in 1934 after just a lot of resistance. That's the word. And part of that artistic movement was composers of classical music were encouraged to include traditional songs in their repertoires, but also dancers and drummers, people who were from the Peristyles, were organized into folkloric companies. And so the next slide goes back to the 1950s. Okay, that's an early picture of La Troupe Folklorique Nationale. So these people were probably Vaudouisans. They were probably from Vodou societies. The society is the congregation, and they found another place in representing Vodou on stage in festivals. And a national theater was created, and La Troupe Folklorique Nationale was the resident kind of national ballet, if you will. And so this was now the artists, the dancers, and the musicians have a double function. They're playing in Vodou rites, and they're also playing on stage for the public. And it's a way of reaching out to the general public and teaching them something positive about Vodou. And that comes down to today. But it already really got its start in the 1940s, especially. I think that this picture is from 1950s. Okay. Now I've been throwing some words around, like the word Vodou, for example. So where does that come from? It comes from the Fongbe language of Benin, and it just means spirit. And it recognizes that there is spirit in everything. And a lot of the language that of Vodou is from that language, not all of it, but probably the reason is because they were among the earlier people who came to Saint-Domingue, the earliest of the captives. And the Congo, the people who came from the Congo tended to come later, and a lot of this had to do with what was going on in Africa. And I believe there was civil war in the Congo region in the latter part of the 18th century. And so all of a sudden you've got a lot of people enslaved from that region. And in fact, they say that at the time that the revolution broke out, there were about 500,000 people in the colony, and 30,000 of them are French. Okay, so it's 30,000 out of 500,000. 40,000 of them were people of mixed blood, and the rest were people who were Africans. But of those Africans, slightly more than half were from the Congo region. But the stamp of Benin and in that part of West Africa is very heavy on Vodou. So I mean, what this would suggest to somebody who wants to go into the study of this is there's more work that needs to be done on the Congo side of Haitian Vodou. So anyway, some more vocabulary. The word loi. I've never been quite satisfied with explanations that I've gotten about exactly where it comes from, but it's spelled LWA, and you'll see it in some of the older books as LOI, but it's LWA in good written Creole today. And it's a spirit. So you talk about individual spirit, you talk about nations, but then within the nations there are individual loi, like Dambala, Loko Aizan, Erzili, Ogun, Baun Samedi, and so on. I mean, there are many of them. So that's the word loi. There is a grand maître that's recognized. So the grand maître is the great master, something like God. And but you go to the loi for assistance with when you need it in your life, in your daily life. You go to the loi. Grand maître is more distant. Yeah, let's look at the next slide. Okay, this is another Kessler Pierre creation, and this one it's a veve, and he did it using computer art. Very beautiful, and this is it represents legba. So it's another veve. I brought up that word before. And the veve are traced on the floor of a peristyle, which of course is usually in Haiti, traditionally it would be earth. And so it's brown, and you trace the veve with corn flour, with yellow corn flour, and that's how it can be seen. And in New York basements, you have to do something else. If the floor is not amenable to that, then you put something down so that you could see the veve. But it's also become an art form in Haiti, and so but each loi has a veve, or sometimes more than one veve. You see the crossroads in this. Okay, so you see a cross, kind of holding everything up. You see a horizontal line, and then a vertical line going through the horizontal line. This is the crossroads. This is the place where humans meet the loi. There are all kinds of explanations that are given about the structure, like the loi live underneath the horizontal line, and the world of the living people is above the horizontal line, and the vertical line is the way of kind of creating a path through which the two sides can speak to each other. And the staff on to the right is what Legba walks with. Legba is considered an elder, and so he needs a staff when he walks. Other symbols here are taken from, as it said, Freemasonry, because this has been very big in Haiti. But you see the I mean, just how beautifully done it is. It is a work of art, and later on, I'm going to show a picture of somebody actually doing one. Okay, and I'd like to talk for for a moment about the soul, the concept of the soul. So you've got Grand Maître and you've got the loi, and then you have humans who are material, and yet we all have that the spiritual side of us too. We're moved by spirits. And each of us has a gros bon ange, which is the big good angel, the big spirit that is our individuality. There's a petit bon ange, which kind of functions as your sense of right and wrong. And then there's the maître tête, which is the master of the head, and that's usually a spirit. Like Prisoner Augustine's maître tête was the spirit Ogun. And another person will have Erzili as their maître tête. Now, this doesn't mean that you can only get that spirit, have that spirit become like a medium for that spirit in a Vodou rite, but you can be possessed by other spirits as well. But there's that one that's particularly strong in you. So that's there's a whole theory of the soul that we could go into even more. And let's go on to the next slide. Okay, so this is Prisoner again, and this also goes back to 1984. This is in a basement peristyle in the Bronx, where he took his second step in Vodou. He was initiated as a youth in Haiti, and here he's you see that he's holding a rattle in his left hand. He was left-handed, that's why it's in his left hand. And the rattle is called an asson, and it's a symbol of the priesthood. So he was taking one step up toward the priesthood. He never went all the way, but he was what you call sous point, which means on the point. And that's what that ceremony was for. This was taken again by Chantal Regnault, and it was at his coming out ceremony. He had been in seclusion for several days, and this is when he came out on Sunday. So, so he became, well, he was already part of that society, because that society that initiated him here, the one in the Bronx, also took him in when he first came into New York in 1972. He was their first drummer. He also held several other positions within that society, which you could also call it a société. So that's a family of Vodou initiates under the direction of a central priest. And the priest could be male or female. This is one of the things I love about Vodou, that the priesthood you could be a man or a woman with equal power. And the woman is called Mambo, and the man is called Ungan. So anyway, so Frisner came into the société early on, and then when he decided to take this step, it was with this société or society, congregation, another way of saying it. Now the Vodou dance, what people call the dance, or I've been using the word ceremony. A lot of people use the word ceremony. Actually, when I started with this, I didn't really hear ceremony except from outsiders, people who are not Haitian. And there is a word ceremony in Vodou that very specifically means the veve, and the cornflower that's used to trace it. And but I like the word dance, and I've come to use that more often lately, dance, because Vodou is a danced, one of the what they call the danced religions, and so I want to talk just a little bit about that and about how, again, how the come back to what I started with before about how the dance, which is all night, goes all night long, goes into like toward sunrise, how it's organized. And I mentioned that people remember the nations of spirits that they came, the nations of ancestors that they came down from. So at the very beginning of a Vodou rite, a Vodou dance, you'll have salutations to the Rada spirits, and these spirits are associated with West Africa, with Benin, Togo, and that region, that particular region. You go on to the next major nation or nation that's saluted as the Juba nation, and these are the spirits of the earth. They're represented often as farmers or the earth itself, and the things that come from the earth. And then you go into the Nago nation, and these are people who are historically related to the Yoruba, and their main spirits go by names like Ogun Badagri, Ogun Batala, Ogun Ferai. It's the warrior spirits, the spirits of strength, and so they have their, their place in the ceremony. And as you go along through these different nations too, what changes is the music. The beat sounds different. The drumming style sounds different. The dance looks different. The colors change. For example, white is the color of the Rada nation, and for the Juba nation, it's blue, and blue with a little red mixed in. And then for Nago, it's red. It's completely red. Now the next nation after that is the Petro nation, and they also are red. And these are people who are definitely the Petro nation is definitely from the Congo. Maya Deren, who I'm going to bring up in a little while, really thought that they came down from the indigenous people of Quisqueya, of the island, but that's pretty much been debunked today, that they really come from the Congo region of Africa. And these are spirits of, they're also very strong, but in a different way from the Nago. They're not warriors, but they are too. I mean, they're just very fiery, and they represent change in a lot of ways. So that's Petro, and their music sounds very different, and the dance is very different from everything that we've seen before. And finally, I mean, there are other nations too who will come in and out, but more minor. And you end with the spirits of death. This is a family called the Gede family, and they actually come from the same region that the Rada nation comes from, but they're more like the indigenous people of that area who were conquered later on, and their conquerors were so impressed with their death rites that they preserved them, and they just pulled them into their own culture. And it's I mean, they're infinitely interesting spirits, because here you've got spirits of death, right? Sounds scary. Well, no, I mean, these spirits they're highly risque. They people are just shocked sometimes by some of the things they say, but they're doing it all in fun. They're very funny. They're comedians. And so the idea of like death being a comedian is just like, an interesting one to think about. But they come at the end. They're the final nation that's saluted. And so all of this ritual order that I've just gone through, and it's really, again, we don't have much time to go into some finer details here, but it's called the règlement. And the règlement is a word that comes out of French, and it was a word that was used to describe the order that the troops went out in either if they were going to a parade or going into battle, that first, this rank went out and then that rank and so on. And so that word was brought into Vodou, règlement. So the règlement is the ritual order. So with all that said, I'm just gonna I want to give you a chance to see what a ceremony looks like. This, of course, they all look very different depending on whether you're in New York or in Haiti, and then of course the different parts of Haiti. But this is one that I took going way back. It's like from 1991, and I have others, but usually I'm filming and videoing in New York, and it's very, very crowded, and it's really hard to get the camera to see everything that's going on. And this space that we're going to look at is it was in a peristyle close to the cemetery in Port-au-Prince, and it was large, and you could see everything that was going on, and so that's why I chose this one. One of the women who was involved in it is, and she leads these salutations that you're going to look at. She is Frisner's cousin. Her name is Mimose Louis. And at the time, she was a member of that société. And then some years later, she started one of her own. She's, a Mambo priestess. And what we're going to see are salutations to the spirit Loco. Okay, so they just went into, like, within the Rada nation, you salute first Grand Chemin, and then Legba, and then, there's a kind of règlement within the nations. And so they were up to Loco here, who's a patron of priests. And you can see the drums very, very plainly in this video, which is another reason why I liked it. And so what they do is they start the salutations by going around the poteau midon, which is like a center post. And the center post is a lot like that vertical line that's going through the horizontal line in the Veve for Legba. And so every peristyle's got a poteau midon. And so they go counterclockwise around the poteau midon, and then they turn in the four cardinal directions, four directions of the cosmos. And then they go over to the drums and they salute the drummers. You'll see that there's a candle in front of each drum, because those candles were put there earlier on during salutations for the drum spirit, for Untor. And then they move from there to the poteau midon. They do another round of salutations there, and the salutations what I mean is you're going to see them turning and curtsying and kissing the floor. That routine is repeated: the drums, the poteau midon, the altar, and then there's a room that you can't really see in the video, but it's nobody can really see it anyway unless they're initiated in that society. It's called the Javo, and so that's the last place that where they do the salutations. And so if we could watch that now, again, 1991, Port-au-Prince. Mhm. Okay. I'm just looking at the clock, and do we want to take, if we want to take a break now, because I've been going for,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so because we're a bit behind schedule.
right, and
Uh,
I think we can skip the second video.
Yeah, and there are several questions waiting for you already, Lois.
Oh, okay.
So I will read them to you in the order they came in. I wanted to thank you for explaining this really interesting connection between the visual and the performing and all this in the Vodou and the Vodou rites. So the questions, the first two questions that we have are rather connected. One came from Coffee Doncor. I happen to know Coffee, and that is why I can tell you that he's an artist himself, living in New York. And he's from the Asante people of Ghana, visual artists and performing artists, and very knowledgeable about the West African cultures and the various people living in West Africa. So his question was related to the meaning of Vodou, but not just the origin of the word, just more in depth explaining the Vodou as a name describing the whole belief system in general.
Oh,
And the other question is related. That is why I'll give them both to you. Um, it comes from Javier Archbold from Old Providence Island, West Caribbean. Is Vodou a religion? If so, why is it associated with superstition and Obaya? So
oh,
if
okay.
let's go into these two, and there is another one. Oh, there are several other ones that just came in.
Okay, well, about, yeah, Vodou, as I understand it, I know like I said, I've only been, I mean, to people who were born like, 20 years ago, so this might be strange, but I've only been with it since 1980, 81, which isn't really that long, just in historical terms. And so everybody was calling it Vodou by that time. But a more traditional way of people talking about what they were doing is just Servi-Loi, I serve the spirits. Instead of saying my religion is Vodou. I mean, it's fairly recent in history that it comes to be like the title. And as I say the word religion, and this kind of like comes to the second question, I always say that with hesitancy, and I don't really like calling it a religion. And that might just be my personal thing, because there are a lot of people in Vodou who insist this is a religion, and probably because of the way it's been denigrated. But to me, you don't have to adopt a word, I mean, I wouldn't adopt it for a reason like that. I mean, to me, having grown up in one of the religions, I mean, and religion was on our report card when I was in school. And so I may have a more jaded way of hearing that word. And I think that Vodou is a lot more than that. It's not just this, like, belongs to this category of things that people do. It permeates everything that you do. And so I'd rather, if I'm going to have to make a noun of it, I would lean towards saying something like, it's a spirituality, it's a form of spiritual practice, and emphasize the spirit part of it. Because I mean, I mean, that's if you have to make a noun of it, because
Understand what you mean.
Lua is a verb, right? I serve the spirits, and
Well, I think that you're trying to go away from the word religion because in 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 many parts of the U.S. society, even the word religion is interpreted in a very, very narrow.
Mhm.
While all African religions, they're all encompassing. They are part of life, part of a way of
Mhm.
life.
Yeah,
I have a question.
But
I have a question. I
yeah,
was wondering, so I have, I guess, two parts. One is, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the like anti-voodoo sentiment and like how did that happen? Where did it come from? Did like
yeah.
know, a lot of it came from cinema and just the like anti-Haitian sentiment because they were so strong in terms of fighting off the oppressors at that time.
Yeah, and
So,
Yeah.
and so
And that,
as a retaliation to
Mhm.
that, there was a lot of deliberate misconceptions that were created. So
Mhm.
I wonder if you could talk about that. And then also, are there any like voodoo societies around masquerades that you could talk about?
yeah, and but that's about the this attitude that you're talking about. This is what Javier is asking. Why is it?
Right. Why is it demonized the way it is?
Yes.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. Yeah, well, uh, Haiti is, it was like actually the only country that really won a revolution. I mean, there were some victories in places like Brazil too, and people successfully built maroon colonies in other places like Jamaica. But I mean, they created a nation out of this and if you look at documents from that time, I mean, you can't underestimate how, the powers around Haiti, those in Europe, but also the United States were just like shaking. This was a horrible thing that happened, that slaves freed themselves, and this is going to inspire uprisings in our places, in our colonies in the United States. And so, yeah, Haiti becomes demonized. Well, first of all, part of it too is silencing Haiti. There's a great Haitian historian named Michel Rolfe Trouillot who died not too long ago. And one of his books, in fact, his really best known book is Silencing the Past. So either you had an attempt to just don't say anything about Haiti. And I mean, I know I can't think of any time in my K through 12 that I even knew where Haiti was. And I mean, there was nothing. There were like three revolutions that took place at that time: the U.S., the French, and the Haitian. And we hear nothing about the Haitian Revolution. So silencing is one part of it, and then demonizing came, I think, generally a little bit later. Not to say that there was no demonizing earlier on, but I mentioned that in the 1860s, the president of Haiti, Jaffrar, at the time, uh, wanted to mend Haiti's fences with the Vatican, because the first Haitian constitution had a separation of church and state. And so the church actually just kind of mostly pulled out. Um, and so they made up this agreement called the Concordat. And right away, missions were built in France to send, missionaries to Haiti to convert these, ignorant Vaudouisans, into Christians. Uh, and and so it could become very violent. But I think it's not a coincidence that right at that time, it was either 1860 or 61, right at the time of the priests started coming in, the missionaries. You have this big scandal breaking out in a town called Bizoton, which was right near Port-au-Prince. And 8 people were accused of ritually slaughtering and eating a child. And I mean, there's never been any proof of that. They were lined up against a firing squad. They were executed. And I think it was Alfred Maitreux who said that there was evidence that they were tortured into confessing. So, but I think that the coincidence of these two things is just like, that was an attempt to demonize Vodou. A little bit later, a U.S. diplomat, what was his name? Oh, I usually remember his name, but anyway, after he retired, he wrote a book and he talks about the Affaire de Bizoton. And you pick up that book and look at any page in it, and it's just dripping with this racist view of Haiti. The Haitian people is just like
And
savages.
did they
Hmm?
gather all of the ritual objects and burn them in center spaces?
Mm.
I
Yeah,
heard,
and that.
like I heard about that. Could you talk? Was that
Mhm.
a real thing?
Yeah, I think they did that more than once because there've been a number of persecutions, but the one that you're talking about is probably from the 1940s. So that's not that long ago. And they called that the rejeté. And so they would send, in fact, if you really, well, if you have to read French for this, but the book by Jacques-Stéphane Alexis that's called Les Arbres Musiciens, which means the musicians' trees. This hasn't been translated yet, and somebody's got to do it. But it details exactly that. And that this rejeté was working hand in hand with an attempt to take land from Haiti to grow rubber trees, trees that would produce a latex for the US war effort that was going, this was during World War II. And so that's what the rejeté coincided with. But yeah, Alfred Métraux talks about it. Jacques Roumain talks about how they gathered all of the objects together and set a bonfire.
Yeah.
But it didn't do it though. It didn't it didn't succeed. It put people through a very difficult time. But
Many of those attempts didn't succeed, thankfully.
right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Till nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
You explained well how historical facts perhaps the reason to come into the cinemas and into the films, but
Mm-hmm.
through the films and all these very cheap Hollywood zombie making films, disseminated it throughout the population and created
Uh-huh.
this negative attitude towards voodoo, which is very,
Yeah,
very,
and
very, very sad.
that's
But
what people
happen,
believe.
it
And
did happen, and we have to continue talking about this, telling people what
yes,
it's all about.
yes, that's right. That's right. Yeah, keep on.
I'm
And
afraid that we're really, really pressed with time because Andresa is our next presenter.
oh,
I wanted to read you
yeah,
one last question.
okay.
Marilyn White. Marilyn is a retired professor from the Kane University, and until recently, she has been the president of the American Folklore Society. She wanted to know what effect has the recent political turmoil in Haiti had on traditional practices in New York City? Has there been much interaction, long-term or recent, between the communities in New York City and Haiti, especially because of the effects of the new cultural impacts on folks in New York City?
Wow. Uh, that's so recent that it's a harder one to answer. But I know, I mean, there's a lot of there are a lot of meetings going on right now about what to do in view of, for example, what happened in Ohio. Um, and the Haitian Studies Association recently had an online meeting to brainstorm of, okay, what are we going to do? There hasn't been, I know, like during in the run up to this crisis that is in full swing now. I mean, I to me it started in 2018. I remember the day that it was uh some huge demonstrations broke out over an IMF agreement that Haiti had made with because there were going to be steep rises in the price of gasoline and things like that. And it led to, and then there were a couple of scandals that were also investigated at the same time. And so there was like a series of huge demonstrations, and the response to that was, like to get really, really heavy-handed. And then you see the weapons coming in where from mostly the United States, coming in from Miami, uh, coming in through seaports that are owned by very wealthy people in Haiti. And or landing strips that are owned by those same people. I mean, to just translate a sign that I saw at a demonstration. It said, "The country doesn't manufacture weapons. Where are the weapons coming from? Ask the USA for us."
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, and
It's a very, very complicated situation, so it's difficult
and it's
to.
still kind of new, and then people trying to like think of what to do about it.
Yeah. Thank you so
Yeah.
much, Lois. Thank you. I mean, these
Oh,
are huge topics, and I think we're in trouble when we have these so meaningful presentations and trying to say everything in this limited amount of time. But if we
oh, can I just ask one thing? So do we just skip over that video too, just to look at a still photo? I just wanted to go to the next slide. This is our own Kessler Pierre. This was at a performance in Brooklyn, and I just love the way the kids are like hanging on to what he's doing there, but he's tracing a veve. I just wanted you to see how it's done. He's got in his left hand, he has a plate of corn flour, and he takes a pinch of corn flour and sifts it to the floor to make these lines. And it's an art. So I'll
Thank you
close with
so
that.
much. I mean, this is really, this picture is good that people can see how this actually works, not in a picture. And I'm so happy that you are introducing Kessler's work. And
Mhm.
I would like to tell everybody in attendance that I had the pleasure to work with Kessler. He's an extremely talented artist. And he does Veve, but he also works in glass. And he did several residencies here at WheatonArts and worked with our glass artists, created some of the glass songs that we displayed. We had a major exhibit of beaded flags and songs, and Kessler's work was really featured for many, many months. And I hope that I will continue working with him in the future.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Oh, all right. Thank you very much, Luis. And I'm really hoping that we might have a couple of more minutes after Andrea's presentation to touch base on some of these huge topics that we're trying to
Yeah.
discuss so briefly. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, everyone. Again, good evening. I have the pleasure of introducing one of my very great friends, my hermano, Andres Cisneros, from the Timbalona Collective Music Ensemble, but overall, just an awesome artist. Andres is a professional musician and teaching artist with a specialization in hand percussion, rooted in the African diaspora, particularly in the Caribbean and South America. Born and raised in Caracas, Venezuela. I hope I said that correctly, bro.
Mhm.
He was shaped by a multicultural family of progressive thinkers, artists, and educators. After migrating to the US as a teenager, Andres embraced his African heritage, embarking on a lifelong musical journey that helped him adapt to a new cultural landscape. In 2008, after completing his studies in Puerto Rico, Andres moved to Philadelphia, where he has excelled in both as both a full-time music educator and a performing musician. Holding a MED Masters of Education, he developed innovative music curricula at Independence Charter School and Impact Charter School and Clive Ed Music Educational Company, focusing on Afro-Caribbean percussion. As a practitioner of the Afro-Cuban Lukumi Ocha tradition, Andres is an initiated priest of the Anya drums and is crowned as a child of Oshun. He is also an active freelance percussionist, collaborating with various artists as both a drummer and vocalist. All right. Andres also partners with other organizations, and he's very active in Philadelphia and surrounding areas. This is none other than my hermano Andres Cineros.
Thank you.
Yes, my brother.
Thank you, my brother. I appreciate you. First of all, thank you for inviting me to this space and share a little bit about what I know, and I know Miss Luis. Thank you for your presentation. That was a very eye-opening and thoughtful experience to listen to your experience as well. And you know, there's so much we can talk about. There's so much in this world that we navigate and continue to learn from and continue to be a part of it as with as much respect and honoring the tradition of our ancestors, as well as continue to move it forward so that our future generations can inherit it, treasure it, and continue moving forward with it, with all this knowledge. We are limited. We are just humans. But as Ifa says in the Lukumi tradition, el saber está repartido. Knowledge is out there, knowledge is spread. It's there for us to pick. It's there for us to use and manage. Otherwise, we do lose it. I will at this moment share my presentation with you. The bata and guiro, the ritual music as an expression of African spirituality and aesthetics. We're going to explore a little bit about the profound meanings and the symbolic richness of musical worship through my experience as a young drummer in this tradition. To start off, this is music of the music of the bata and guiro as instruments used in specifically in the Cuban Lucumí tradition. And when I say Lucumí, I mean what we know today and what is referred popularly as Santeria. Santeria is a name that I'll mention now to start off and give us a reference, perhaps something that you've heard before, a name that you've heard before, but we will remove ourselves from that name, and I will explain that it is actually, we as practitioners, we refer to this as la regla de ocha, which is called the rule of ocha. Now, this originates in West Africa, in present day Nigeria, Togo, and Benin, the Dahomey region. So this is music that is everything to do with spirituality and guides practitioners' way of life, very much like religion does, and in the case of the dance or so-called voodoo, music is an intricate part of how these systems of belief manifest, and as something that is created and done in community. So the main deities in the Regla de Ocha are known as the Orishas. The Orishas I like to express as the forces of nature, as the manifestations of a main power in the way that in the Lucumí tradition, Olodumare is the all creator, the all powerful being. As you might, as is unfortunate and common for people to be a little bit ignorant about this belief system or this religion. They might associate each of the deities and what they are and what they represent with gods. These are manifestations of the world, the everyday world around us. So the Orishas are the energies that we are sitting on, that we are nurturing ourselves with, that we are breathing in. That is the Orisha. And how we honor these Orishas through music, like the Batangui. So in the Orisha pantheon, I grew up with stories. I love stories. I thank my mother for being the one of the greatest storytellers I know. And not only her stories about my family and our collective families, and the way that she would recreate these images in my head, and I would get lost in this in a world. And with this was also the Western traditions, the Greek gods, the pantheon of Greece, and all these amazing stories and Aesop's fables and all these amazing things. And then later on, I discovered the Orishas. and how their stories could be even older and similar. And also suddenly I'm making connections between phrases that are spoken amongst the high priest as phrases to guide us in the community, or a phrase spoken or interpreted through divination in a consultation with a high priest. And suddenly you're hearing words that can be found similar message in books like the Bible, in phrases found in the Torah, in the Jewish tradition. So suddenly there I found this commonality, and so who came up with this first? And not to attribute any first phrase of the human experience to any specific culture, yet we do share so many of these common phrases. And the Yoruba have a pantheon of energies that each represent those divine messages that simply guide humans in helping them make the proper decisions as it applies to their specific lives. So the orishas are those protective forces, and again, they are personified through the regla de ocha. So we might see we actually interpret chance, good luck, bad luck, the crossroads. Very much, I'm sure we're going to find correlations between with what Miss Lewis shared, and Echu, Elegua being an energy of good luck, bad luck, life and death, left turn, right turn. So these are things that we go through every day. There are not only the main energies that we call the orishas de cabecera, but they are the main orishas that we also receive as crowns when we initiate ourselves in the priesthood. So that is a process that we call a cariocha. And when we do an initiation, it's a set of rituals that allow us access to information and ways to relate our personal experience and have a comforting energy. What I interpret myself as a comforting energy to guide in throughout life. Now, these orishas are known in the picture you see here. We have Elegua, we have Chango, Yemaya. So there are these. I'm sure you have seen many of these before. So how do we adore the orishas? And this is where we get into the music. The bata drums are originally from what we now today know as Nigeria, from the kingdom of Oyo. These drums are well over 500 years old. The system that you see here in these specific images are what we call in El Caribe the African bata. Estos son bata africanos. We practice a different set of bata, again, bata being the same drum, but with certain differences. Bata means family, and so these are 3 drums that are used to relay these messages through not only singing, but the drum speaks a language, and it can be translated and spoken in language, in the language being Yoruba. In the other image, you also see these are Nigerian men in ceremony using another type of drum known as a talking drum. These drums did not make it to the Americas, but the chekere did, and you can slightly see the chekere in the image. And now the chekere is the traditional name. Now we might know it as shekere. In our Spanish, we pronounce it chekere. and in the context of music, spiritual music, we actually call the chekere guiro. So guiro is also an instrument that I'm going to hold right here. This is a Puerto Rican guiro specifically. And this is the name. I want to make this distinction. This is the name of a specific instrument, also known as the guiracho. But this is a Puerto Rican instrument. And the Cuban guiro is slightly larger, but it's also a gourd. However, when we are speaking in the context of spiritual music for the orishas, for ocha, we call the shekere guiro. I do need to make that distinction. So speaking about the bata drums, here's an example in the image of traditional African bata. And the bata that you see hanging here against this fence, those are the drums that, as an Anya priest, I am sworn to. These are the drums called Obalaye, the kings of the earth. Obalaye is the drum that I am it's a consecrated drum. This drum was born in Havana, Cuba. It is owned by my godfather, Michael Sotolongo, son of Xiomara Rodriguez, who is the first folkloric dancer of the national Cuban, for the Folclórico Nacional Cubano, which was a folkloric dance and music ensemble created at the time of the revolution to honor the African populations in Cuba at the time of the revolution, when they were reforming themselves as a nation. I say that with distinction because not only is Michael, my godfather, a Ilu Bata, which means owner of the drums, but he does come from a legacy of amazing cultural resistance through the arts and spirituality. I went through the ceremony of these drums in 2012. I've been sworn to Anya for 12 years, and we consistently play ceremonies throughout the tri-state region. I can't count how many times for the past 12 years we've been playing, but it's been a while. The drums that you see here in the bottom image are my personal bata drums. These are not consecrated drums. These drums are called abericula. Abericula are drums that have not gone through any ritual, but can still be performed in certain instances for rituals. Yet, if a devotee or an ocha practitioner is going to offer an ebo, which is an offering to a specific orisha for or has to do a job in particular, we are called to perform with consecrated drums. Okay. The iya is again, bata means family. There are, if you notice in the picture of the African drums, there are four different types of drum, 3 drums specifically, and then 1 drum that has 3 specific heads. Okay. Notice that the change in the Americas is that we still have 4 drums. You're only seeing 3 in this specific picture, and I'll get into that in a little bit. So, but before that, each drum has a name and a function. The large drum is called the iya. This is the drum that initiates the call. The bata drums as a collective can recreate the tonal language of the Yoruba. There are certain rhythms that we play as a collective that are literally pronouncing the words of the prayer, or what we call the suyere, the prayer for the specific orisha. So the iya initiates that call. It is the lead drummer. It is the lead drum. The drum that answers is called the itotele, and that is the middle size drum. And that drum responds to all of the calls of the iya. The time it's not considered the father drum, but it's like the older brother drum. The smallest drum on the ensemble is the okonkolo, and the okonkolo makes sure that keeps the time. And it might sound as a simple function, but it is in this family, everybody has a function and a purpose, and there's no sound that is lost in the ensemble. In difference from the Nigerian bata, the African, I mean the African style of playing bata, there are many similarities, and when you hear the language of the drum as a Cuban drummer, I can understand what is happening. But there are some translations, there are some variations of those drum accents, if I may, that are simply, they did not come to the Americas. They are not played in our traditions, and it's amazing to hear the ones that do relate, because you can literally hear the difference in accent. It's like me listening to somebody speak Spanish from the corners of South America and Chile, as opposed to the Spanish that I speak in the Caribbean. Now, in the Cuban tradition for ocha, traditionally, the añá drums, the consecrated añá drums, are ideally played in these traditions. Now, because of economic reasons, and those are personal reasons, a person might opt to hire a group to play a guiro for their orisha, and that is also fine to do. You can also get played an abriculá set of drums, but a guiro is another option. The guiro is traditionally three gourds, three chequeres, a flat iron a tool that we use for agriculture. We call that guataca. And if you can see slightly, you can see the image more or less, but it is a tool used for agriculture. We call that the guataca, and we use another metal stick to play. And another instrument that we use is the conga, a conga drum, and that is the drum that marks and improvises, similar to what the iya might do in playing bata. But the chequeres, or the guiro, the chequeres in a guiro ceremony will play a specific patterns with the large guiro improvising, similar to the iya drum in the bata family. There's a the medium-sized gourd that responds similar to the itotele, and the small gourd that keeps a steady time. The rhythms are not alike, but they do have that similarity in function. They are large chequere calls, improvises, the middle chequere and the smaller chequere hold a steady pattern, complementing the improvisation of the large chequere. The real improvisation master is on the conga, and they are responding to the akwon. The apong or akwon is the person that is charged of singing in these ceremonies. These ceremonies are not only about drums, but they have a singing element where there's a strong call and response effect going on. The akpong or akwon is in charge of leading the calls and leading the suyeres, leading the prayers. Once a person might be touched, meaning they might be go into a trance-like state and receive the an orisha and to deliver a message for the attendees, the akpong is in charge of leading those prayers and invoking that spirit so that they can deliver whatever message needs to be delivered at the place of the ceremony. I purposely put a picture of a woman playing the chequere because women can play in a Guido ceremony. Okay. However, women cannot play in a bata ceremony because women cannot be sworn to the Anya drums. Anya is a in the Yoruba cosmology and in the system of philosophy of the Yoruba traditions, energy is real, and there's a positive and a negative. There's a feminine and a masculine. Positive and male energies do not mix with traditionally with the female energy. So Anya is is the deity of the drum. The reason why they're called Anya drums is because Anya is the deity of these drums. It's a spirit that lives in the drums. That is the Orisha of the drum. It's the Orisha of sound. It's the Orisha of the Big Bang. Okay, this is the interpreter of the explosion of Olodumare's creation of the universe. So, as that sound, interestingly, is interpreted as a female energy. So, a woman cannot mix with the female energy. When I explain the reasons for this, I'm not an authority in this religion. I didn't make it up. Again, I know very little, and even a high priest will tell you the same thing. So I've experienced people being upset, women being upset. But I will say this: in Cuba, where I went to take on this experience, there are groups that play outside of the religious context. There are many groups of women that play this, and I know personally many women musicians that play better than any man that has the consecration and went through the ceremony to be able to play in consecrated Anya drums. But again, in ceremonies, that's just how it is. However, in Guido, women can play on what the conga, which we actually call la caja, the box, la caja, we refer to as the conga in this context, or can play the guataca or any of the chequeres. The function of the Añá drummer is to, when we are in ceremony, our purpose is not only to play, but we are also responding to the apón. We are actively participating in the call and response for the prayers. We are involved in making sure that in where we are in our area, next to the throne, that we are responding to also the attendees and whoever is receiving or being touched by that spirit, by the spirit of the Orisha that is being invoked. So our job is to maintain that the ceremony. We are court musicians. We are musicians of the court, and the town is who we're servicing. We are servicing the community of devotees. To be an Añá drummer, men identify not only as men, but no men that are homosexual also cannot be part of this tradition. It's a lifelong commitment of studying, maintenance of the drums. If you notice here, these are the drums. These are again obalaye, and we have the fourth drum, which is called the elekoto. The elekoto is the fourth drum where these drums birth other sets of drums. Now, Añá arrives in the Añá drums in Cuba were created in 1830 by a gentleman called Añabí. He was also known as El Cojo. He was a man that was brought to Cuba enslaved from Nigeria, from Oyo. He was a practitioner of Añá, and he again. The Ma'afa was a an event where people were kidnapped from all parts of the Western Africa, including Southeast Africa. So the whole continent saw a rupture and a disruption to its system of society. So many over for 400 years, many people from different parts arrived. This gentleman known as Anyabi found another gentleman that happened to be from also happened to have knowledge of Anya drums from back in Oyo. They created in 1830 their first Anya drums. And that drum, the name that drum received was his name, Anyabi, son of Anya, son of Anyabi. So from then on, from 1830, other drums were birthed from that drum Anyabi. The keeper, the gentleman that inherited the drum from the first Anya drum, Anyabi, was a man named Andrés el Sublime, Andrés Roche. He maintained the drum for many years throughout his life. When he passed, he gave the drum to his son, Pablo Roche, also known as Aquilacqua, the man with the strong hand. So Aquilacqua was the keeper, one of the most prolific and known drummers of Cuba in this tradition. He was the man that was interviewed by Fernando Ortiz, who is the gentleman, the Cuban academic in the early 1900s that was able to document initially many of these Afro-Cuban traditions prior to the revolution, still when Cuba was living under social racism and segregation, very similar to the U.S., perhaps even worse. Pablo Roche, that drum Anyabi gave birth to the drums that you're seeing on screen. So the drums that I'm sworn to, Things of Life, which I am grateful every day, the lineage of this drum comes from Anyabi. So it's a lineage that is highly respected, and this drum currently lives here in New Jersey. And so it's when we meet as Anya drummers, it is a fraternity, and there is an immediate level of respect. Again, we're all humans and we have our defects, but it is a fraternity where when we meet each other as Anya drummers, there's a code of conduct, there's a poise, and there used to be a term that is no longer used anymore amongst the youth, but there is a swag that is characterized with the men that do have the to maintain these traditions. There's a conduct towards family. There's a conduct towards our parents. There's a conduct towards our neighborhood and our community. There is no flaws, ideally. So now moving on to the relationship to the altars that is worthy of mentioning. Altars are in the Lukumi tradition are not comparable. They are definitely the American version of how altars are built still traditionally in Ife and in Oyo to this day. The way we build altars in Ocha, notice the top picture. This is my fairly recent Ocha birthday. I've been crowned Ochun for 8 years, and this is in us getting ready to play for Ochun and for Chango. And notice that I have a very considerably humble looking altar as compared to other practitioners that might go all out. So you might see very humble looking altars, which are perfectly fine. Again, this is about your spiritual connection to these forces of nature. And then you have people that really like to show and, again, bring the community to their space of worship. The space of worship is called an ile. the house of worship. There are no churches in Ocha. This is, you can come to my basement. We can go to somebody's backyard. We can go to somebody's living room. These are spaces where you bring, because what is important is the Orisha that is being honored at that moment. I did wanna show you this video that I thought was very, very interesting. You have a Yoruba speaker, a native Yoruba speaker, and then you have a Lukumi, so-called Lukumi speaker from Cuba, saying the same words. So you're gonna hear traditional present-day Yoruba, and let's say 200 or so year old Yoruba. Most Yoruba people were brought in the 1800s to the Americas. And this has to do with at the time that the Spanish crown was holding on to dear life to its colonies in the Americas and exploiting as much as possible its sugarcane production. And they, as many wars were going on because of the disruption of the European powers disrupting many of the West African kingdoms, it became easy to kidnap and make deals to transport thousands and thousands of people. And in the case of Cuba, there was roughly 1 million people brought in the span of 150 years. About 700,000 individuals were enslaved. So you are gonna. This is a 150 year difference of present day Yoruba as spoken, and what we speak now in Ocha is more of a spiritual way. So here it is.
Oricha,
Orisha,
Oloricha,
Olorisha,
Ache,
Àṣẹ,
Ibaeba Entonu,
Ìbà ẹni tó nù,
Echularoye,
Èṣù láróyè,
Kinkamacha Mama Kenya,
kí nǹkan má ṣe ẹ́, má má kẹ́ ènìyàn,
Alajiki,
alájìkí,
Ogunga Wanile,
ògùn abánilé,
Ogungonile,
ògùn onírẹ̀,
Alacheri Owo,
alájẹ́rí owó,
Afina Malu,
àfiná màrù,
Ogungala Wede.
ògún alágbẹ̀dẹ.
So there, you can tell here that, you know, certain pronunciations in Lukumi will pronounce the R's, that is our Spanish influence. In Nigerian Yoruba, you hear the L emphasized. So those are, I did want to make those distinctions. So when we play a ceremony for the Orishas, we start with what we call the Oro del Igbodu, or we call it the Oru Seco. And to initiate a ceremony, drummers sit in front of the altar with the drums. There is certain things that we do prior to initiating this moment, but we start playing a specific order of orishas that come in the Oro Seco. First and foremost, you start with Elegua, unless the ceremony is for another orisha. In the case of Oya, we would oftentimes play for Oro Egun. And I do have to mention, there is no orisha, there is no forces of nature without our ancestors. This religion, I didn't mention earlier, but have to, starts with what we refer as Egun, the collective spirits of the dead. And we honor Egun by doing a moyugba. The moyugba is the initial prayer where we honor first and foremost Olodumare, and then we go through a sequence of the higher powers that be, our the collective ancestors of humanity, the ancestors of our community, the ancestors of our family tree, and then we honor those that have consecrated us to be in these spaces. And then we honor specific people, and then we honor and we mention ourselves in the space as in the initial, in the start of a ceremony. Each person that is consecrated Ocha has their personal moyugba, since we all come from different family trees, different iles, different houses of worship, and we honor our different godparents that brought us in, and their lineage as well. So just similar to how I describe my drum lineage, it's kind of like giving myself that street cred. Like I show up and like, where you from? Where you from? Where you from? So the moyugba or presenting ourselves is also a way that we are honoring personally, and also in speaking our respect in that space. Okay, so once we start the oro cantado, the oro seco, we start with el Egua, Ogun, and Ochosi. These are the warriors of these traditions, and the warriors are the initial spirits that all Ocha practitioners receive. Before many people make Ocha, they receive Mano Rula or Awofaca, which is a protection and a destiny, a divination to in their life destiny, and they receive that with a high priest called a babalao. The babalaos are the high priests that are sworn to Ifa, that receive Ifa. The high priests maintain and hold all the stories of these traditions that we call patakis. I know there's a lot of words. I know there's a lot that in the short time, I know my time is running out, but the warriors are the first three that we start in the oro. After that, we play 20 other rhythms, specific rhythms for 20, in total is 23 orishas that we play in the oro seco to start each and every ceremony. Then we go to the oro cantado, which is the sung and the prayer, the sung prayer part of the ceremony, where we play that same sequence of rhythms, but in the same order for each orisha, but we sing for every orisha. After that, we go through what we call the Wemilere, which is the party of the party time of the ceremony, which is where we invoke specific spirits or specific orishas to come down and deliver messages for the attendees. There's a lot more things in there, but so here is an example of El Egua. As I mentioned, he's the owner of the crossroads, human destiny. His colors are red and black. And he uses a guava stick called the garabato. Listen a little bit to El Egua.
Para su año, Omoniana Guana Mama Kenya Irao, O para su año, hecho dará, Omoniana Guana Mama Kenya Irao.
All right. So you see that El Egua has the garabato stick and he's clearing the path. This is a personified an image of a spirit that is clearing the path for that individual to go forward or to see where they should go. The next orisha that I will present is Ogun. Ogun is the owner of metal. He's the reason literally why the world spins. every metal is in the core of the earth, and every metal comes out. We manipulate metals. He's the blacksmith. He in his case, he's clearing the path. Literally, El Egua is showing you that path, kind of clearing that bush. But the person that is chopping that bush for you to get on your way is Ogun with a machete. Here, and I chose this one specifically because you will hear the chequere. This is done in the context of a guido, so you can hear the guido in this context.
Ogun choro, aina choro. Ogun choro, aina choro. Papa El Egua con lo cumbayo, aina choro.
Ogun choro, aina choro. Ogun choro, aina choro. Papa El Egua oro kumayo, aina choro.
Ogun choro, aina choro. Ogun choro, aina choro. Papa El Egua con lo cumbayo, aina choro.
So you see the nature, the force. Ogun is not a gentle spirit, and working is not gentle. Working is hard. It's effort. So as El Egua is you pinpointed where you want to go. You see the options you have. Ogun is clearing it, or being the one that to open and or push that door open for that individual. Quickly, I will share another video of this is an example of Ochosi. Ochosi is the third warrior. Ochosi embodies justice. He is personified by a hunter with a bow and arrow. So Ochosi represents your motivation to get where you want to get to. So these gentlemen are playing. Gentlemen are playing congas because this is for Brazilian candomblé. So in this example, you're going to see how some of these orishas are still practiced in areas like Brazil. So you're going to hear the rhythms from Brazil, and then it's going to turn over to bata and the way that is played in Cuba or Chosi. Regardless, the dancer will make the exact same moves. We were kidnapped, but simply dropped off in different ports. And this is an example of that. All right. So some of again, speaking on the differences of speaking of Yoruba in spoken in Brazil, and Yoruba spoken in the Lucumí tradition in Cuba, there's many similarities. Of course, the influence of the Portuguese, the influence of the Spanish, the influence of the British in Nigeria. So there are linguistic differences, but or more accents, but it's very, very similar. The tradition is still the same. The core and of the spirituality behind the religion is still there. All right. Ochung is who I'm crowned. We won't have time to see through Ochung, but Ochung is I am crowned Ochung, who's the owner of the river. She represents love, fertility, family, and it's definitely a gentle, but also can be a very powerful spirit. I have to show you Chango because Chango is considered in the Lukumi tradition the king of the religion. Chango is the embodiment of a real king that actually lived in Oyo, in the city of Ife. The city of Oyo in Nigeria still stands, and there's still to this day an actual king, the Oba. And Chango is, again, the reason why we practice these religions, because Chango is the embodiment of the spirit of every individual that survived the Maafa, whether they landed in Cuba, Brazil, Trinidad and Tobago, Haiti, Venezuela, or any country that has Yoruba traditions or of the kingdoms of Dahomey, present-day Togo, Benin, Nigeria. This is the reason why we practice this. It's the warrior spirit, and Chango is literally every individual that asserted themselves in their belief system. I am also in the Lukumi tradition. You receive a father and mother, a feminine and masculine energy. My masculine energy that I'm crowned is Babaluaye. And this is the personification of maladies, diseases. And this is the miracle worker, literally absorbing any disease in ailments and curing those. So he is the doctor. And again, when you explore the patakis or the stories behind the personifications of the forces of nature, you will know that you will find, and you have to read it with an open mind, because again, I'm saying personifications, and it is simple to see these images and say, oh, it's a man with crutches. Disease, get away from here. Leprosy, AIDS, what's all that about? And present day COVID, nah. You got to understand, this is ways to interpret what humans were making sense of in 500, 100, even thousands of years ago, and to this day, what we make sense of. I think in times where we have so much access to information and technology that makes it so easy, we're losing a little bit of touch of looking beyond what is in our faces. And I think what I've learned in my journey of practicing Ocha is that there's much more to the rhythms, much more to the drums. There is not just what the prayer, the suyet is translated into. It's where is that coming from? I could read a Bible verse or a song and say, oh, worship God, I worship you. You are my savior. And okay. And many of the songs here are also can be translated directly to that. We just sing them in Yoruba. Again, not losing focus that we are praying again for for spiritual fulfillment. It is a religion when we have to follow certain rules and meet and establish traditions and norms of how to carry out ceremonies. Absolutely. But beyond that, what we cannot lose sight of is the spiritual connection that we all genuinely have, and that it is what fulfills any religious system. But in this system, that it has been demonized, that it has been because of the ebos. Again, this is a faith system where sacrificial offerings are part of the system. We call them ebos. Yes, there are chickens involved. There are animals involved. There is blood involved. Blood is ashe. Blood is life force. And as these things might be and which is fair, odd and to a specific groups of people, this is why knowledge is spread. This is why diversity is important. This is how different experiences thrive and survive. I think that I've said plenty, but I do want to thank everybody and for allowing me to give a little bit about what I know, a glimpse of what this incredible rich tradition is. I have a ton of questions about voodoo. I see so many similarities. I still have a lifelong journey to go and continue my journey in Ocha, as other traditions that are intricately part of my experience as a mixed cultural, multicultural individual. So I thank you again humbly for listening, and I want to turn it over to our mediators and give opportunity for questions.
My man, thank you, brother. I learned a lot in your presentation myself, and I mean, we've worked together, and although I've never really been officially a part of the religious systems, I've been very much around it for many years, and I'm just appreciative that you were able to like really break down and articulate a lot of things. I think you did it in a way where like it was really easily understood, but at the same time the complexity of what you talked about, you know, is was really pertinent, like so people know that this is a real highly evolved system of thinking about our spirituality. um I mean there was a couple of questions inside of the chat, brother. I mean, I'm trying to figure out which one was the first one. There was a one by Evelyn, and do we have time?
Yeah, I think so. We can go a bit over, but I mean, people ask the question, so it's
Yeah,
better that we ask them, and it's we receive, you will see later, but these are so many thank you words and encouragement and appreciation for you both. It's just unbelievable. But there are a few questions as well. Yes.
yes, and like I said, I want to get a couple of questions, and I really would love to hear like just the conversation between you two. I mean, there's so many beautiful correlations of like just the traditions and the way that the traditions manifest around other influences that came around our people historically. Evelyn asked a question about women and gay men and being banned from being playing in bata ceremonies in Nigeria and Brazil. So what about the Babalao? She asked this because you're a scholar, and I'm not. Oye, I don't know how to pronounce it correctly. Oye Ronke Oyewumi claims that the Yoruba language and culture did not separate gender roles before the arrival of Europeans to the region.
You know, look, we went through the culturation. We went through the Spanish colonist, and also in that way we have the Catholic influence. As much as you know, speaking with my elders in Cuba, and I got the opportunity to speak with Yoruba priests from Nigeria. If you've ever debated with a Cuban man about these issues, be ready, because it's a humbling, and you just sit back and listen. It has a lot to do with cultural dynamics,
right?
But to short answer, what I will say is that there is a heavy resistance to any change in Cuba in adapting into what is continually being practiced in Yoruba land today. There's a debate about how to practice Ifa in Cuba and practicing Ifa in Nigeria. There is more open-mindedness by Cuban Babalaos to be like, okay, let my personal my godfather practices what we call Ifa tradicional. That means traditional Nigerian Ifa. That's my godfather. And again, it's a growing process. So I'm gonna take this question to him, and because this is it's an ongoing debate. I can tell you that they're not. Everybody has their function. For example, gay men or homosexual men are a part of their religion. It's just not in Anya.
Right.
Just not in Anya. Short answer.
And I would say, just in my practices, and I'm not as versed in Lukumi or Yoruba religious traditions, but in Mali, for example, there are mass societies for men, there are mass societies for women, there are different societies, and there is like a gender differential there. But then there are some spaces where both can occupy. So I just wanted to bring that part in there.
Yeah.
Iveta, did you have another question?
Well, there is one question in the Q&A that Michael asked, asking about the relationship between a society in Cuba called Abakwa and Lukumi. But maybe you can go further and speak more general about these correlations, not just between these two societies, but between Vodou, Candomblé, Santeria, and maybe Luis can jump in and these comparisons in the Americas and of course the Caribbeans.
Well, I just like as a question, what is that? I mean, can you? I'm sorry, repeat.
I mean, how do you comment on the correlations between all the belief systems in the Americas that are based on the African heritage? I mean, obviously they are related, and obviously there are elements that would be the same, similar, or different. How do you see the similarities and differences?
Well, I've always been struck by how, I mean, starting with the differences, in Haiti, the slave trade ended in 1791. And this was before there were large numbers of people coming in from the area of the Oyo Kingdom, which, I mean, it was like a very, very powerful, even in the 18th century. I think it was, I understand that it was most powerful in the region. And so it took somewhere into the 19th century to bring that down. I think it was the British who did that, not the French. And so then a large number of people went in, were taken as captives into the Americas, Brazil, up to the Caribbean, and so I think that accounts for a lot of the difference. Where in Haiti you've got this really heavy, Dahomey influence, much less of the the Yoruba comes through through the Nago, which they were called the Anago, and they had migrated into the Dahomey area, which is now Benin, but they're historically related to the Yoruba. Today in Benin, you still have settlements of Anago people, and they brought Ogun with them. But they were coming in far less numbers in Haiti in the 18th century than they came into the Spanish and Portuguese colonies in the 19th century. So that accounts for some differences. You have to really look at the patterns in the slave trade, which changed over time.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And
but there's all from Africa, and you have to remember too that Africans were also exchanges with one another. They didn't have like circles drawn around them and were separate peoples. That they also did a lot of trading and of ideas and cultural items as well as other things.
Yes.
Yeah, I agreed. In fact, I have a good friend, Babalao, lives in Massachusetts, Springfield, Massachusetts, and he is doing research on the similarities of Ifa in present day Benin and Togo, which, like you just mentioned, Louis, there was migrations of Yoruba because of those wars in the late 1800s, and so it, and again, it's a lot, and I am no authority there. I just is a few things, the things that I've read have definitely informed me that there is much more to what even as Cuban practitioners of Ifa know as is out there. But regardless, they will defend, and the Lukumi tradition will defend itself as endemic, not endemic, but it is as much Cuban as it is Nigerian, or as it is Yoruba, as it is, yes, of a tradition that came from people of Yoruba nation, but they created more of a system by a collective that was kind of like, hey, are you in code? You're in code. Oh, you also, and getting together and gathering these papers that were crucial, specifically in the early 1900s, is when these elders finally got together and said, okay, we're gonna die. A lot of us have died. How are we gonna preserve this? Again, why it's called the rule of Ocha, regla de Ocha, is because these are stories, system, ceremonies that were written down by specific people, dictated, people that did know how to write, to grandsons and granddaughters and grandchilds, or children that were able to preserve this history. And this is why it's going to be little deviance, if anything. And again, there's a question there I noticed about why is it so different. A lot of it is not so different. But I can tell you that there are some, yes, obviously there are some things that just didn't make it across. I can tell you my interpretation of my personal signs, that in the Cuban interpretation, I am petrified. I'm like, oh my God, what's gonna happen in my life? Like, oh no, it's so tragic. And then the Nigerian or the Yoruba interpretation, it's like the most beautiful philosophical approach that is it just enamors you with like this like uplifting philosophy. It's like, how can these be the same signs? Oh, who was interpreting at the time? Again, we're humans. It's, a lot of the Bible said it was written through the apostles, but it was the word of God. It's like, and God said to do that? Oh, okay. There goes a nation just got plummeted, and I guess God said that. Again, we're humans, so we're interpreting things. But to bring it back, these are traditions that in Cuba there's certain there, as humans evolve, there could be room for growth eventually. Especially for updated beliefs in the way our society is developing at this moment, and by way of being more outspoken about things. I mean, I would say that people of certain sexual tendencies, they were part of the system like everybody else. Like there was no like, oh, you're homosexual. It's just, I think these discourses and sentiments do weave in and out as things progress. Regardless, it was still marginalized, and it still has certain marginalization in society.
Andres, I really appreciated one similarity that I see, and that I really appreciated that you talked about, was the relationship with the entities that we acknowledge and worship. Like talking about Oludumare and where the ancestors fit in, and where do the Orisha come in, and then how do we bring that from like Almighty to who we are. And I see that like in voodoo, I think they call it Bonde or something, like Bonje, like the Almighty Creator. In Mali, they call it Bimba, so there's always like an Almighty Creator. And then underneath that, like in Mali, they have Mami Wata. Mami Wata is Yemaya, you know,
Yeah.
Yemaya is you know, and I'm sure you've heard of similar things, and
Yes.
you can see, like, for instance, the staff that you talked about that Legba has. In the
Mhm.
Veve, you saw that same staff in the Veve.
Mhm,
Am I
mhm.
right?
Yeah.
I forget what you called it, but so
It
these,
was a walking stick, yeah. Mhm.
yeah,
It's-
so these,
yeah.
and the purpose for it. So when we look at all of these like different ways in which we acknowledge the tradition, we know that they come from a similar root, and but
Mhm, mhm.
different ways in which we acknowledge that. And I think that's a beautiful thing as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you so much for mentioning this, Ira, because this is exactly what strikes me the most is if
Mhm.
I can see any major similarity between all of them is this profound interconnectedness between humans, forces of nature, ancestors, living
Mhm.
and nature elements, all interconnected. That is whether we would call them Lua or Risha or some other name, it's still there and it connects us to each other and everything and everyone else. And I think this is the major similarity between all of them. And
Mhm.
just different names and slightly different practices, but this philosophy is profound.
Mm. And they're well-balanced ecosystems. You know, this is ecology, an ecology lesson for everybody.
Yeah.
In a way, and I think that what I see in the chat, you can have more time after that to look at it.
Uh-huh.
But people appreciate exactly this. I mean, bringing this interconnectedness with us as well, and with each one of the human beings, being present or not, which is, I think, remarkable. Remarkable. I can't thank you enough for these wonderful, wonderful presentations and discussion.
Thank you for organizing it.
Yes, thank you. I'm gonna be thinking about this for a while. It felt really good to learn a little bit more from Miss Lewis and
Likewise, yeah. So,
Well, thank you, everybody. I'd like to take a moment here to wrap up our program for this evening with a thanks to our presenters, our moderators, as well as our attendees who have joined us in this conversation. If you would like to follow any of our presenters or one of our moderators, please use the following websites, YouTube channel, and social media handles that you see on the screen. If you would also like them to be emailed to you, please, you can reach out to me and I will send those your way.
And please don't forget that we have 2 more wonderful presentations tomorrow afternoon, and would love to see you back.
Yes, our program continues tomorrow, Saturday, November 23rd. We will begin at 3 p.m. and go until 5 p.m. We look forward to seeing you again.
And now, Luis and Andres, you might have some time tomorrow to share some more insights.
Yeah, please, please. And I'd like to invite everyone to please download the chat to keep that conversation, or if you would like to email me and I can provide you with that text. I'd also love to hear from people who are either new to our online programs or to Wheaton Arts. Feel free to contact me. My email is on the screen, and you can reach out with any questions or comments that you have about our program or any future programs you might be interested in. I sincerely thank everybody for being here, especially to our presenters and our moderators, and I hope that you join us for future programs. Thank you so very much.